We're just going to wait so everyone can be connected. Nous allons attendre juste encore une petite minute, le temps que tout le monde se connecte. Merci. Parfait. Bonjour. Bon après-midi.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good morning, wherever you are listening to our webinar today.
Or good morning, wherever you are.
Being here.
Thank you for being here. So directions are being given for the interpretation. Obviously, if you're hearing the interpreter right now, you're already connected. So
Select the language of your choice. Part of our presentation today is going to be done in French.
Parts of our presentation will be in English and some in French today. So welcome, everybody. I was just mentioning in English that you can use the interpretation services. Please don't hesitate to use those. All you need to do is click at the bottom of your screen. There's an interpretation globe and choose the language of your choice. So the first two presentations today will be in French and the third in English. So thank you for being there today. It's an honor for us to be there with you today for this third of 5 webinars. And today, the topic will be support and services to First Nation students. So this webinar will last 90 minutes. So maybe you might have noticed that cameras and mics are turned off as participants. This is normal, no worries. And I don't know where, I imagine you're quite familiar with Zoom right now. So you can communicate with the other participants on the conversation, the discussion window, and you can also ask questions to the panelists and speakers by clicking on the Q&R function at the bottom of your screen. And so don't hesitate to send your questions over. If not, a last element maybe, as usual. We are being recorded and this will be available on 4Wave. For addresses, you will find all of the information in the participants guide that was sent to you. As we usually do, it's very important for us to leave room to our elders when we open and close our events. And it's even more so important today when we talk about the future of our coming generations and supporting our students and their future. So today we have the honor of welcoming Mrs. Édith Picard to start this meeting with an opening prayer.
Good afternoon. Bienvenue.
Welcome and good afternoon. We are dispersed but united by a subject that is dear to our hearts, support and services for First Peoples students. We were invited or we were designated to participate in this webinar, or we registered because the topic is of interest to us. We have a role, therefore, to play here, a different one from one another, but important nonetheless, and that only us, each individual person, can fill that role. When we talk about support and services, I associated these qualifiers to a presence, being present for the other. And then by a quote from Michel Leboeuf and that trees, like humans, are relational beings. They need a multitude of many other living organisms to maintain themselves, to grow and to reproduce. These days, it's particularly fascinating to observe trees. They change so fast, a growth spurt in a collective effort. This can seem to be very imposing, but they need collaboration of many tiny microorganisms for their development. For example, the mushrooms in the earth that will allow the soil to play its role, or the bees for pollination, the roots serving the tree in a very discretionary in a very discretionary way, contributing to growth, to rooting, to strength as they grow. Each branch, each leaf has its specificity, but everything is harmonious. And the tree, according to its essence or the season, will offer shelter, shadow, protection, improve our environment. We must remember that we are relational beings, because this is something that envelops us, but that is very engaging. Much like the tree, we need each other. We are useful, mutually useful. We have our own strengths. We have different roles. Sometimes we work with discretion. Sometimes it's more apparent. But each one of us, we are all indispensable. Let us give thanks to the Creator for the presence of each one here, for the capacity to collaborate, to support, and to be in service to each other. Let us give thanks also for the work of the organization team that allows us to be together. Let us give thanks for the investment and the perseverance of the students. Have a good meeting. Tiawen. Thank you, Miigwech, Madame Picard. Thank you for having accepted to do the opening prayer for us. Madame Picard is an elder from the Wendat community in Wendake, close to Quebec City. Today, we will be discussing a theme that is very important. I am sure that you already know to what extent support services for First Nation students in post-sec institutions. This support makes such a difference for them. These leverages are essential to contribute to the success of their studies. So this is the theme of our third webinar, 3 of 5. So we have 2 left to do towards our final destination, which will be the National Forum on Reconciliation that will take place September 22nd and 23rd. So, of course, this is coming up fast. The 5 themes of the webinar were agreed to through dialogue and reflection and findings that emerged during discussions between the post-sec institutions on the one hand, but also between First Nations organizations and Inuit organizations in an exercise where a discussion brought forth 5 main themes for our webinars. These webinars will help us to better understand the different issues discussed, but also, and more concretely, to identify solutions or potential solutions to be able to work towards our vision and reach and achieve the objectives that we have set. And the engagement and mobilization, of course, is important, because even with the best of ideas will not be successful without this mobilization. It's an important factor in this effort. Today, we have the honor of having different speakers, by starting with Mr. Francis Verreault-Paul, who works at the Nikanite First Nations Center at the Université du Québec in Chicoutimi, and Mrs. Tanya Sirois and Amélie Lainé from the Regroupement des Centres d'Amitié Autochtones du Québec, the Friendship Center movement in Quebec, and Mr. Mike DeGagné, who is CEO of Indspire. You know that organization as well. Before we pass the mic over to our speakers, we would like to invite you to view, and we've asked you this before, a selection of testimonies of First Nation students and Inuit students to whom we asked the question as to what the issues were, what solutions would they propose with regards to support and services to First Peoples students. So with no further ado, I would invite you to view this video with us, which will allow us to hear their testimony. Thank you. Support and services to First Peoples students.
My struggle in university was really more of an intellectual struggle for me. Just like I said earlier, because I just felt very alienated. I felt like, first of all, there's not a lot of Indigenous people at university. You know, there's a handful maybe. I'm the only Cree person at Concordia right now who's doing a PhD, so that I know of. So it's very lonely sometimes.
At
the beginning, I didn't know anybody there. So when I came to the meetings, there were Indigenous students, but after 2 or 3 classes, we started to talk together and then get together and become friends for the rest of our studies. But apart from that, it's more in the second year where there were services for Indigenous students. There was a room reserved for Indigenous students.
I also got a job as a nurse. So I was working weekends at the hospital and going to school during the week. And the reason I did that was back then the funding for students wasn't that great. And the rent was really high in Ontario. So I had to sort of get a job to be able to make ends meet. And that went on for, I think, about a year. I was able to manage that while going to school and while having 2 kids with me. It was crazy, but I had to resign from my position in order to successfully get through the program, because at that point I had gotten sort of a warning to say your place in the program is in jeopardy because you're not maintaining the minimum level that you need to get through. So
je me retrouvais être la seule autochtone dans le cégep, puis j'avais pas beaucoup d'amis, puis je savais que j'avais besoin de soutien au niveau de mon apprentissage, puis je savais pas trop où aller m'enligner, je savais pas trop où aller cogner la porte. Fait que j'ai quelques profs qui m'ont quand même aidé par où aller. Dans quelle porte aller cogner pour que je puisse avoir de l'aide. Là, ce qui s'est passé, mes notes n'étaient pas bonnes. Fait que j'ai eu un découragement. Je me suis dit, je vais-tu arrêter d'aller à l'école? Fait que je me suis dit, je pense que je vais retourner à Manouane. Puis je me disais en même temps, ça va me permettre d'aller me ressourcer aussi, d'aller dans le bois à Manouane, puis d'aller réfléchir de qu'est-ce que je veux faire vraiment.
It was a drastic change from going from CUNA, where I was like 4 students in the class, to go into Concordia where you have like over 100 people in the class. So there was a lot of sense of loneliness from myself. Like I felt like I didn't belong along with all these other people.
On est habitué, quand on est dans une communauté, notre école primaire est petite, notre école secondaire est petite quand on en a. Moi, je n'en ai pas à Wendake, mais on est toujours avec un petit groupe. Quand on arrive à l'université, on arrive au cégep, et on est une goutte dans un océan, puis on n'a pas le temps de se connaître, puis on n'a pas le temps, on n'a pas le même aide qu'on a, puis il y a beaucoup de monde qui ont besoin de l'aide. Là.
Certaines personnes comme moi qui ont grandi dans la région de Québec de façon urbaine, c'est beaucoup plus facile de s'intégrer à un programme postsecondaire. Mais je pense à mes frères et à mes sœurs qui viennent des communautés qui ont toujours vécu là, dans le bois, et qui s'en viennent à l'université complètement perdus dans une région urbaine et dont le programme académique ne reconnaît pas du tout ces compétences-là. Et donc, doivent développer des compétences, s'adapter, tout en ayant peu de bagages au niveau institutionnel. C'est difficile de parler pour tout le monde, mais certaines personnes vont trouver très difficile l'adaptation. Pour plusieurs raisons. Il y en a une que je vais mentionner qui est vraiment très importante pour nous, c'est la famille. On est souvent des familles qui sont très unies, tellement qu'on va être des bassins familiales unigénérationnels.
A few weeks passed and I was very homesick. It was hard, very hard. I called my dad many times crying, wanting to go home. I felt inferior to my classmates who were almost all Southerners.
C'est comme la première journée, j'ai rencontré mon aide pédagogique individuelle. Bon, il m'a tout de suite recommandé, bon, Audralie, je te propose de prendre 5 cours parce que c'est ce que font les étudiants autochtones ici. Ils font 5 cours, puis après, ils abandonnent. Puis moi, j'étais comme, non, je dois suivre le programme, le cheminement proposé, je dois prendre 7 cours. Puis dans le fond, j'avais tout le temps 7 cours ou 8 cours dans mes sessions, puis j'ai réussi à le faire en 2 ans, comme le cheminement proposé. Mais c'était plus là où j'ai senti un peu de racisme systémique.
But I don't know if it's because I was Indigenous or just because of my high school experience, but they expect you to not know what's going on, and they expect you to take what they call these pathways programs. And I remember being kind of offended, like, pathways, like, why can't I just figure it out like all the other students, you know? And I remember the advisor was very, very like persistent. No. If you're an Indigenous student and you're coming from up north, then you have to take pathways. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not really coming from up north. I've been in Montreal for 6 years. But it's like he just wouldn't let it go. And he was almost forcing me to take pathways, even though I didn't want to.
Ça aurait été le fun qu'il y ait un genre d'accueil spécifique pour les Autochtones, faire des activités d'intégration, puis, mais il n'y avait pas ça. Fait, je sais pas, c'était plus il manquait de quoi à la rentrée pour les Autochtones.
Il y avait des enjeux de où j'allais le faire, en combien de temps je fais ma médecine. J'avais déjà un enfant à ce moment-là, un conjoint, un condo à Montréal, une vie établie. Et franchement, ce qui a été le plus soutenant à travers tout ça, c'est que j'ai rencontré les gens responsables du contingent des Premières Nations. On m'a fait visiter les universités, on m'a accompagnée et je pense que j'ai pu faire un choix éclairé. Je me suis sentie la bienvenue à travers le programme, ce qui m'a donné beaucoup de confiance de me lancer. C'est qu'il y a un conseiller pédagogique pour les Premières Nations qui est présent, mais qui nous soutient comme individus, à ce qu'on se rencontre tout simplement pour voir comment ça va. On a aussi créé à l'Université Laval une espèce de cérémonie d'accueil où au début c'était assez informel, où on rencontre puis on réseaute. Moi, c'est vraiment comme ça que je l'ai compris, de savoir c'est qui les autres étudiants, d'où ils viennent, parce que moi, je la connais pas, la réalité de la fille qui est Innu, qui vient de la Côte-Nord. Je la connais pas, sa réalité. Puis ça l'a amené un certain une certaine sécurité pour les étudiants des Premières Nations d'avoir ce filet-là.
On cherche à regrouper, en tout cas, on interpelle les étudiants autochtones, on essaie de les faire qui s'auto-identifient finalement pour offrir des services, pour offrir des lieux de discussion et tout ça. Fait que ça, je trouve ça génial.
The Aboriginal Resource Center usually opened up the semester with a feast. So you would get introduced to all the new students attending Concordia, and you get to meet up with everyone and introduce yourself and just see if anyone else was going to the same program as you. So then you'd end up making friends. I never stepped foot at Concordia's library. And I tell people this and they're like, how did you graduate? And I'm like, I didn't step foot at Concordia's library because I had the Aboriginal Resource Center. They had the computers, and they also had a small little library of books that you could use. And there was an elder there that you can go speak to, or if you just need to hang out, or if you needed to smudge, there was someone there for you as a student.
Puis j'ai eu une bonne accompagnement aussi, parce qu'on a une locale pour les autochtones à l'UQAM. Fait que j'étais pas le seul autochtone aussi, il y en avait d'autres qui avaient dans différents programmes.
Every CEGEP and every university has a center for Indigenous students, which really helps. And you can go there and you can ask questions. And most of the people that work there are Indigenous themselves. And you can speak to other students and figure out how things work. And so I remember that helping me a lot. I met other students there, and we, so I think if I had to recommend something to other Indigenous students, that would probably be my number one recommendation.
Puis c'était un lieu aussi de rassemblement. On se voyait quand même, on s'entraidait, on se motivait, puis c'était une place aussi pour se socialiser.
Moi, j'ai toujours eu la fantaisie avec le groupe d'intérêt en santé autochtone de faire venir des gens là, pour un peu dire c'est quoi le vibe des Premières Nations, c'est quoi les valeurs, c'est quoi, parce qu'il y a quelque chose de beau, de différent à voir là-dedans. Puis dès qu'on sème cette curiosité-là, je pense qu'il y a une ouverture qui se fait, qui peut juste grandir par la suite.
When I started in CEGEP, I was very well supported by Kativik Ilisarnilani, where they, as I was telling you, they had tutors, they had people checking on us, but we need more people like that within the faculties as well. Another big thing, as I was saying, is mental health. Having that support is major, because I personally, I don't mind sharing, I went to see a counselor for my mental health, but we couldn't connect because they didn't know where I came from. They didn't know my history. You need someone who's aware of that. So having counselors who are aware of your history, having psychologists there. So it needs to come academics, and mental health support is a big factor.
Ce qui m'a beaucoup aidé aussi, c'est ça, c'est le support. Le support de l'administration, le support des autres étudiants. C'est plus une ambiance familiale qu'on va retrouver dans cette cohorte-là. Juste le fait que c'est la même cohorte qui se suit. On a le support de l'administration, il y a une coordonnatrice du programme qui est toujours présente, là, puis elle est présente souvent dans les cours même. J'ai jamais vu ça ailleurs non plus.
La personne ressource qui pourrait aider aussi, c'est qu'elle soit là en mesure pour interpréter aussi les difficultés que les étudiants peuvent avoir. C'est un peu ça aussi, là. Puis essayer aussi avec des ressources pour faire aussi les ponts pour connaître des ressources, oui, mais toutes les ressources autochtones qui existent aussi dans la ville où on se trouve. Donc, cette personne ressource-là, elle peut être primordiale pour eux, pour les guider tout le long aussi, pour s'assurer qu'ils finissent leurs études là, supérieures.
Puis il y a tout de suite une étudiante qui est venue, il m'a comme dit « Ah, toi, t'es autochtone ?» J'ai dit « Oui ». Puis il me dit « Moi aussi ». Puis c'était comme côtoyer tout de suite. Fait que je me suis comme sentie moins seule quand j'ai su qu'il y avait une autre étudiante autochtone. Ça m'a comme soulagée un peu de savoir que je n'étais pas toute seule. Puis il va il allait avoir quelqu'un qui allait m'aider dans le fond pour la suite, genre pour nos suites de cours, parce qu'on avait la même horaire, et ça m'a fait du bien de savoir que je n'étais pas seule.
The only thing I can say that made me feel like I belong was my Inuit peers and the student residents. The school board up north, they have an office in St. Anne's, 5 minutes from the college, where they offer academic counseling and help kind of integrate us into this new world of education and way of living. And for the first year, Inuit students are required to live at the residence. So we have a cook that cooks for us, we have help. So we're really well supported in that area. And I think living there and getting help from there, and also living with my Inuit peers, we were able to connect with each other and kind of, we were going through the same thing, and that's what was the best thing for me, honestly.
Une autre chose aussi, c'est quand on va à l'université, c'est qu'on se sente aussi chez nous, qu'on ait un côté un peu chaleureux. Parce que les Autochtones, on est chaleureux. Puis qu'on ait une place, qu'on soit tout le temps ensemble, qu'on fasse nos chants ensemble, qu'on fasse nos prières ensemble. Il faudrait que, comme qu'on faisait au CDFM, on faisait des matchs, on faisait des festins.
Pour aider à briser les barrières d'un membre de Première Nation intégrée au postsecondaire, je pense que avant tout, c'est de s'intéresser à sa culture, de la comprendre, avant même de mettre une action. Donc, avant de pouvoir créer quelque chose, je pense que d'évaluer, et je crois que ça doit déjà exister des recherches là-dessus, il doit y avoir déjà des écrits ou des choses, mais c'est d'aller s'intéresser au mode de vie d'un membre d'une Première Nation et peut-être de poser la question directement à ces gens-là, à ces étudiants-là, comment on peut venir vous aider, vous tendre la main et vous donner ce que vous avez besoin. Qu'est-ce qui vous manque?
C'est quelque chose que j'ai vu à l'université, qu'il y avait un petit manquement. Puis ça, c'est comme des choses, justement, qu'on devrait travailler. Mais juste le fait d'avoir une locale étudiante et d'avoir une personne responsable qui s'occupe des étudiants autochtones ou à l'UQAM, aussi à l'EDM, c'est déjà une bonne action. Disons qu'on s'en va vers une bonne direction, mais il y a encore du chemin à faire.
Merci. En tout cas, bien sûr, nos...
Thank you very much. Our students aren't all present today, but thank you for all these testimonials. Also, if you wish to watch this video another time, to pay closer attention to it, we put it in our chat box. We placed a link, and you can, of course, have access to this video on the forum's website, so don't hesitate to consult it. There are many other elements and different discussing the issues of different First Nations students. So without further ado, now I would like to invite our next guest, who is the Chief of Relations, Head of Relations, Indigenous Relations since January 22 at UQAC, Francis Verreault-Paul, who is from Mastouillatch, like myself. So thank you for being here, Francis. So before we let you speak, I'd just like to mention that you worked as an advisor as well for the Council of Inuits of Mastouillatch before joining the First Nations team, and you have a diploma in sciences and psychology from Buckingham University in England. So I suppose that Indigenous services was not on the curriculum then, but however, here it is. We're talking about service and support to Indigenous students. So we're talking about what was being deployed amongst the First Nations regarding first support and services. Thank you very much, Alexandre. Just to talk about my academic path, I did my BA in McGill in science and psychology, minor in psychology, and I did my master's degree in MB in England. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for this invitation. And all these capsules, these vignettes that we saw really gives meaning to what we're doing. And it's very motivating to continue the actions that we attempt to deploy. At the First Nations Center at the UQAQ, Université du Québec à Chicoutimi, I will share a presentation that I prepared. Great. So first of all, I'll present the the Indigenous Peoples Culture Pavilion. We have the offices on the second floor, people who work in resources. And there is a common area where students can gather. And the students mentioned in these segments, they talked about loneliness, that they miss their family. So I found that I was very lucky to be able to count on this kind of pavilion at the university. And we're close to the La Vérendrye, Laurentide park as well, a reserve. So we have all kinds of activities that can be held in other circumstances. Well, perhaps less so in especially even more so in the pandemic. We have access to this outdoor area, so we're very happy to be able to count on this pavilion as well. It allows students who come there with the family. We heard this during the vignettes. They come with their children as well. They come to the pavilion. There's a children's play area as well. And they can exchange with the resources there. And there are computers available and work tables as well that organize activities. And it's open to natives and non-natives alike. So it's really a nice pavilion. And we're really, really lucky to have this. So briefly, I'll be presenting the Nikanite Center before I talk about the services and support that we offer to First Nations and Inuit students. First of all, I want to ensure university training. So there are services that are specific to the First Peoples. They have 24 programs, which at the certificate level, bachelor's degree there's short programs as well, joint programs with ENAP and UQAT, different programs that are, and also different diplomas and programs that are available for First Nations, and something that is at the heart of our strategic planning and that I'll be presenting today is student services. We put a great deal of effort to try to innovate and meet the needs of our Indigenous students, and also to be a key actor of Indigenous research and to offer a culturally safe area. And in last year and the current year, this continues. So we want to be a key player in this respect, and we also want to offer a safe space at the university. We're talking about cultural safety. We talk about cultural activities of awareness raising, and also when we have the back to school period, there is training that is offered to the teaching staff, different university resources, and places reserved in different programs as well. So this is these are files that we work on at the First Nations Center. So a bit of background here. Since the creation of UQAAQ University in 1969, the first year, there was a contact established with First Nations for over 50 years of history. UQAAQ committed itself to studies and research and Indigenous studies and research. 2019, the Indigenous Studies Center became the First Nations, Nikanite First Nations Center, and we also have a educational counselor, which was maintained and the first time. So we are talking about the studies as well in 2016, and the pavilion of the Rio Tinto, the First Peoples Cultural Pavilion, sponsored by Rio Tinto. And this was inaugurated in 2016. It's great to be able to count on this kind of pavilion, and we're really pleased with that. So very quickly, we're part of training centers. So for the training centers, we see 4 centers. The French and Quebec Cultural School as well, ongoing training, and the University Study Center of the Eastern North Shore. And many of the students also are on the Sept-Îles campus, so about 150 to 200 students. So we ensure student services we can offer the students, and we can offer these in all the campuses, not just in Chicoutimi, but also in Sept-Îles. We want to be able to offer the same support services to our students. So very quickly, I'll present the First Nations Center. Guylaine Mélaison is the director of the training center. I am Director of Relations, Christine Lecomte, a Research Officer, Nathalie Potvin, Coordinator of Vienne, a Liaison Officer for the Sept-Îles campus, Julie Rock, from Innu from Washat Macmeyatanam, who's with us, management manager as well. General, teaching auxiliary, Lila Lavoie, technician in specialized education, and Julie Arsenault, a secretary. More specifically, I'm trying to speed this up a little bit, but we're talking about support for the students. I wanted to present you with two more specific supports. I want to present Laurie, introduce Laurie and Lorraine. She works on students' academic success. So we have different themes and workshops that were set up. These are different creations. I've got a glitch, it seems. Sorry, Mr. Daniel. Yes, yes. Francis, before we heard you well. We're hearing you now, so. Just start. Okay, just got another call that got on the line. It's the virtual world, but there's another call that came, and somebody got connected on FaceTime, and sorry about that. I got distracted. That really caught me off guard. No worries, no worries. I just forgot to mention. I don't want to. I have to mention the Vice Rector and International Indigenous Relations as well, Alexandre Cloutier, who did great work for the development, more strategic development for the First Nations Center. And I had the opportunity to work with him. So here are the workshops that we've organized for student success. With Laurie, the different themes we've addressed, time management, stress management, study strategies, different long works as well. We have the different vignettes, the capsules, and individual work as well. So it's really greatly appreciated by the students, and there are many testimonials of their success since we set up this student support. And also we have French language support for all of the students for French in general, but there are many students in the teaching, bachelor's degree in teaching. So the big test they have to take, it's an important issue for all students. whether native or non-native, but there's preparatory exams. There are different vignettes and that we've set up. So I want to congratulate our two resources who work very hard and are really innovative. They create different tools to help accompany the students. And as I said, there are many examples of success recently, and it's really great. There was there was a challenge a few weeks ago. And there's one of our students that's taken the TELFI test for you need for a teaching certificate. You need this, the TELFI test. So they had he had support with Milan and Laurie, more specifically with Milan. And we found out recently that this student ended up passing this exam at the 7th attempt, the TECFI. So she's really proud of this. And it's a good example of perseverance of a student's resilience. So I really tip my hat to her. And it's really inspiring to see this someone succeed like this. This is a fine example of academic success. And now there's mentoring. And also in the academic path with our coordinators, we have admissions, changing of courses as well, different changes. So we have we follow our students very closely. I want to present a few internal issues and organizational issues that we could perhaps encounter. So first of all, internally, it is the promotion of student services. It's always an issue to be able to promote or publicize our services to reach the students. And I think this can be done through different platforms. And we have to also be proactive. And there's the actualization of services related to needs. So the needs are evolving. We just have to keep listening, like the possible solutions that we suggested, that we work on we try to be flexible, because we know that a lot of students are trying to balance school and their family, and well, yeah, sometimes you have to set appointments, book appointments a week before for support, and often our resources will have a more flexible schedule. Sometimes they can meet students in the evening. The student will call 2 hours before, an hour before, I need to come and talk and need help for an assignment I have to hand in tomorrow or in a couple of days. So it's important for the resources to be flexible and have a flexible schedule to meet these needs, because if we keep 8 to 4 office hours, we won't be able to offer the support that our students need. And another possible solution is to to listen as well, to be open to changes as well. The needs are evolving. As I said before, if we can create communications channels and to create trust bonds with the students and to be close to the communities and organizations as well. So we should create these collaboration bonds, and to be able to measure, to evaluate as well with surveys and discussion groups to see what works well, what doesn't work as well either, to be innovative, to find new ways of doing things, creating new tools which meet the students' needs. That's very important. And as I said, we can use different platforms. We use different platforms to promote our services, which is quite important, especially with the arrival of new students, to share what we can offer at the the Nikanite First Nation Center. I think that's very important. Regarding organizational issues, one is the continuation of resources as well, the continuity of resources. Funding. This is especially important issue as well, and the promotion of services towards departments and different teachers, the professors, because departments and professors are very important vectors of information for the services that the center can offer. So it's important to reach out to them, to get involved in different committees and tables. That's what we're doing at the First Nations Center, and we're very close to the professors as well. So that is a few possible solutions to help us work better. Than the way we work in Nikanite is to place the student at the center of our concerns, to make it all centered on our students' needs, and to use our services and to build based on, with, and for our students, and to be considered as or make it considered as an organizational priority. And fortunately, at the UQAC, at the university, we have support from senior management, from the vice rector, and partnerships, and international and indigenous affairs. So we have a great deal of support from senior management, and I think that's really important to continue to develop and meet the needs. And also to raise awareness amongst the university community of these different issues that are encountered by First Nations students. We can create activities, tables, and committees where we can exchange, to be proactive and present, and to act in a complementary manner with the services, with the student services, the registrar's office, the different DeGagné, different organizations. We just named a few of these because we work in a complementary manner. And some of our resources who work in student services and Nikanite First Nations services, and others who work in the French department. So these are very important details. And to avoid working in silos, of course. I hope I didn't take too much time.
Merci,
Merci.
Thank you very much, Miigwech. Thank you very much, Francis Verreault-Paul from the Nikanite First Nations Center. That's okay. It's a challenge, the challenge that will be met by our next speaker, to try to condense so much content in 10 or 15 minutes. So Francis, we had perhaps a couple of brief questions. One that was asked in the question and answer window regarding issues. Do you have bilingual resources in your resources? Do you encounter problems with this offer? So do you have any questions? You can speak right away, or you can write them in the question and answer window. So regarding bilingual resources, do you have any issues with this in UQAC? I wouldn't say that there are issues, but it's certain that we use French in the University of Chicoutimi. I also speak English if required, but we can count on First Nations people. We have great collaborations with the friendship centers, the DeGagné Friendship Center, the Roberval Friendship Center in Sept-Îles as well, and Julie Ruck as well, who's the new management director who speaks Innu. So it's important to have this representation, this native representation for and to have these First Peoples present in the university and strategic positions. I think it's very important. And that's what we have at UQAC, and we're quite pleased with this. So I wouldn't say that this is an issue, but as I said, we through different collaborations, we have the opportunity to meet the students' needs, whether it's in the indigenous language, in French, or even in English. We often saw this through the vignette we saw before, that all First Nations don't have the same profile. Some are very comfortable with a second language, with this language, with be it English or French, but others aren't that comfortable with it. So I'm glad there are people who work with you who speak the Innu language fluently. Are there any other nations who attend your university? I would say the students mainly come from the Atikamekw and Innu nations, but we also have students from throughout Quebec, from all the nations. We have students from everywhere, but mainly Innu and Atikamekw regarding our geographical location. We are close to these, the Atikamekw, Bashum, and different Innu communities as well, Pesamit, Mashtoyat. And the Sept-Îles campus allows us to receive many students many students attend the Sept-Îles campus, and most of these are Innu. Thank you very much, Francis. It is really a pleasure to receive you. Thank you, and stay with us. Maybe there might be another question you could answer before. So, Francis, you're talking about your collaboration with the Native Friendship Center of Chicoutimi. So that's like, so this will bring us into the to our next speakers who will be who present. So we have Ms. Tanya Sirois, who is the director of the Regroupement, who's been working there since 2009. She's been executive director since 2013. Hello, Tanya, and thank you for being with us. And we're accompanied by one of our colleagues, Ms. Amélie Lainé, member of the First Nation of Wendake, and has been working at the Regroupement since 2001 to ensure the coordination of programs, and ensures the coordination of programs before she became a director of partnerships and programs. So thanks for both of you here. You have the same challenge as Francis to try to condense everything that was said. And I understand that you have a lot to say. So without further ado, I will leave the floor to you. Thanks. Hello, everybody. So yes, Alexandre, it'll be a real challenge for those of us who know us, Amélie and I. We have the gift of gab. So we prepared to try to condense this and to give you relevant information. We have many things to discuss, and we'll present this quickly. What the Regroupement, the Native Friendship Center Association of Quebec. I'll do this quickly because I think we know these centers well, but we'll talk about our best practices that we've set up, because we've got 50 years of expertise in Quebec and 60 years in Canada as well. So we'll talk about this, and of course, we'll also talk about one of our last initiatives, which is residences for Indigenous students. It's a big file, but we'll be able to present these very soon. So I'll start the PowerPoint by hope that it will work well. So I imagine, thanks, Alexandre. So a very quick presentation of the Regroupement. It's a provincial association that brings together the friendship centers of Quebec. There are 7 other associations like the Regroupement in Canada, so we're not the only one. It's a pan-Canadian movement. It's, as I said, it has been in existence for 60 years. And how were the friendship centers, Native friendship centers created? If we know the history, we know with the Indian actors, some people who lost their status, and some people who had to leave the communities, who had to go to the cities. So in the 1950s, the natives in the cities wanted to create a place to get together and share their culture. And then from year to year, decade after decade, the Native Friendship Centers became the biggest urban infrastructure for natives in Canadian cities, and Quebec included. So we lobby for First Nations, the government, and we also support the friendship centers as well. It's talked about the friendship centers. So we have living environments and places for cultural anchoring. So our mission is very broad. We don't specialize in education or in employment or health, it's or so on. For us, it's in a holistic perspective. Yes, for the individual and the family, and we all know that we can't deal with one issue without dealing with others. So we try not to repeat the Quebec system, which means if you've got this problem, go over here. But if you've got a problem with this, you can't go here, go over there. But you make in a friendship center under the same roof, we bring together different services, and we have this trust bond as well. Unfortunately, in the news, there is a mistrust has been created between the Quebec network and First Nations. So native realities, urban realities in Quebec, it is a growing phenomenon compared to the other provinces. Quebec is a bit slower with this hypermobility between the communities and the cities. I want to specify this. It's not the communities that are emptying out. I'll say this, there's just a generation of First Nations and Inuit who are born in the cities, so they will never know the life in their community of origin or in their reserves. And often people leave the community, they come back to the community. There's hypermobility between the cities as well. And when we talk about post-secondary studies as well, we know that it's a very standardized. You have to register for a certain date, you have to show up on a certain day. So how can the educational system be adapted to these realities? So we have a few statistics. We're talking about more than half of the First Nations who will reside permanently in the cities. So we don't even count people who are in transit, are just there for school. So it's a reality that was ignored for a long time, and also was ignored, was slipped under the radar for a while. But in Quebec, for the last few years, we have realized this, and we're trying to have this understood in a perspective to try to change public policy. So what happens when we come into a city, when we leave the community? Sometimes we leave the community for various reasons, but it happens that when you go to the city, this can go smoothly, but sometimes the person can run into many obstacles. Just before we talked about the language barrier. Often it's French and or English is a second language, so you cannot neglect this. There's intimidation, racism, and discrimination. Unfortunately, these things are still present. Culture shock. To understand that sometimes there are services that are offered in the community. Sometimes the people leave the community thinking that these are how things work the same way in the city, which is quite rare that it happens that way. Access to housing as well, that is an issue. It's an issue in the communities, but it's also an issue when you come into a city. And I'd also add access to adequate, suitable, and affordable housing. So yes, there's housing that exists, but low quality, and often it's not adapted to Indigenous families, and we'll mention this a little bit later. And also misunderstanding and mistrust of Quebec services. The main reasons for this hyper mobility towards cities, we concentrate on study for studies. It's 35%. So it's often the third when we do the study. A third of the respondents are students. So this is not a negligible amount to have such a large pool of students, to see how the system and organizations can ensure that these people have a successful academic path and they can graduate and then continue to accomplish or achieve their living project. I'd like to move on to what we're doing on the ground. And all of this can be found on the Regroupment's website, www.rcaaq.qc.info. So we'll move on to a survey that we conducted with 1,123 students. So we had 35%, 29% were in school. So these are people who go back to study or they continue in school. But we have to understand there are many respondents who said that they were like dropouts that had signed up, that people who were making a return to studies after abandoning them. But there's one that's one sorry figure here, that is 49% of these people have no diploma, and 14% have a university, 29% have a secondary school diploma, 14% have a college diploma. So I see we have a lot of work to do on this level. And of course, when we talk about being in the city, because I know that most of us the schools are not in the communities except for Kiona, but in the most of the colleges and universities are in the urban areas. So we have this perception for some, but it is really
de racisme et discrimination qui sont portés envers les populations des premiers peuples. Donc, ça, c'est...
So, it's not me that invented these statistics. not these statistics, but this wording or these quotes, these are focus groups, and people have actually said that. For services, we don't want to be labeled. We don't want to say we're First Nations because we don't want to have, to lack services. There's this concern that we often hear where Indigenous parents have experienced the same thing as their children are experiencing today. And this is fully experienced by First Nations and Inuit parents. So very quickly, for the context or the background, why our actions are going in the direction of what we will present to you. So Amélie will take over now. Thank you very much, Tanya, but you are always the master of the PowerPoint. Thank you. She said, this is an overhead projector. She said, this betrays my age. I've been to 20 years now with the Regroupement, and the education file is a file that I held, a portfolio that I held by professional interest, but by personal interest as well. And over the years, the Friendship Centers had many meetings for consultations. We talked about the approach in education. The Friendship Centers are not post-sec or school establishments. However, what happens outside the establishments, this is where we intervene. This is where we offer support not only to the establishments, because it's the type of collaboration that we can have, but also with the students and their families. So with all of this experience over the past years, this experience we have on the field, we have developed a strategy. I won't read it because you can see it here on the screen. We discussed this together, and we came up to a main objective that we all share, that whether Sept-Îles, Val-d'Or, and I'll read it for our English participants here, ensure that the Indigenous people in the urban centers have access to comprehensive services for their learning and school perseverance. So this is a continuum of services that is tailored to the student. The Nikanite campus is here, so I'll mention this. So we have a family that comes for studies on campus. They often come with children, sometimes their own parents. How can we make sure that the children have childcare services? How can we support them in that while they register? So it's a continuum of services that we look at. Thank you for changing the slide, not the acetate or the overhead. Who are these students that go through the Friendship Centers? They were met, and they were approached with regards to access to services, but we also have discussions with workers in the Friendship Centers, and this is the overall portrait of this 8% of students that do achieve post-secondary studies. We knew this before, but oftentimes it's mothers with many children that go back to school. Many are first-generation students. They are the first ones to make it to post-secondary. There are two things here. Some people go back to school. I don't like to say, drop out or it's not, elementary, primary school, secondary school, college studies, and then university in 20 or 20-some years. Many of them go back to school after many years on community, either to take care for children, for other people in their family, or just because they needed a break to get started again on the right foot. So this is very different from the average non-Indigenous student. There's a lot of back and forth as well. People will move a lot. They'll go to school during the week, go back to their community on the weekends. We also know what the challenges are with regards to housing, adequate housing, and this will set the table for the rest of our presentation with regards to the support that the Regroupement can implement with regards to student housing and accompanying services. But the centers are there as well for these types of services. Now, for the action components, through this strategy, we have 5 action components. Or again, this will work differently out in the field. If we're in Quebec City or in Maniwaki and Montreal, etc., it will be different. But they all share the 5 that you see here. And these are based on the school success determinants. So this comes from the ministry. It was harmonized with what we see out on the field for our students, but also in line with what the ministry has established. And for partnerships, there are 2 really good practices that we would like to emphasize. Most of you know the local table for accessibility to services in Sept-Îles. They have a subcommittee, an education subcommittee, and this committee or subcommittee brings together education partners in the city of Sept-Îles, Lucat, Tchekapech, Cégep, etc. They developed an action plan, objectives, so people work together to improve and facilitate access to education in the city of Sept-Îles. And another practice to emphasize is the First Peoples Advisory Committee in UQAT, Université du Québec in Témiscamingue. The Friendship Center in Val-d'Or is there, and the center in Sainte-Terre as well participates to improve programs and services for First Nation students. Thank you. I think it's your turn now. No, if you want to continue. No. I think by component, no. If ever you want more information, it'll be a pleasure to share our documents. Contact us or contact the centers. That's even better. Go ahead, Tanya. Thank you. We have very little time before Alexandre cuts our mics off. So just in closing, maybe some of you have heard of this. In 2017, the Regroupement des Centres d'Amitié Autochtones du Québec was approached by the Quebec government to implement a measure. Why the Regroupement was approached? For us on the field, we had a good overview of the issues, and there was an expertise. We do have an expertise with regards to knowledge of the field there in the cities. So because of our expertise, we were approached to construct 2 student housing units. This was the measure, Indigenous student housing in 3 years. And it's almost 3 years and a half now, 2017. It's been 3 years and nothing's been done yet. But the first it will start in Sept-Îles this month. But these infrastructure projects are really complex. Not only is this complex with regards to management of the actual infrastructure, the wood, the cement, and all the construction items they need, but what is interesting in this initiative, yes, we built this with the students, that's where it started, but also with the partners. And this was so important for us, and this is why it has evolved over time. Housing for housing, that's not what we want. That already exists. We want community housing for the students. And in French, there's a difference between, we use pupil in French, élève. So this was for students and pupils. And just in closing, we started out by surveying people who we knew that when housing would open, they would already have their diploma. But we know that it will be mainly women who will occupy these housing units, mothers, an average age of 28 years old, 2 to 3 children each. So we had to take all this apart and make sure that these community life hubs can meet all those needs. And of course, very quickly, people told us we have 3 criteria. Obviously, the cost of the rent. This housing, they can't be higher than what's out on the market. That's quite a challenge too in our budget. And the proximity with the other services for children, and also adequate housing. And very quickly, people said, we don't just want an apartment. To help us to be successful, to break down obstacles, we need services. We need cultural activities. We need childcare services, academic support. We need psychosocial support. This was specified in 75% of the cases. That's 3 out of 4 students who told us, well, we need this to make sure that the winning conditions are there so that our post-secondary studies are successful. Here is what we need. And for that this response comes from out there on the field and not from our office in the field, our office, or an answer imposed by the government. The students needed to tell us what they needed, and quickly, very quickly, and it takes the actual colors of what that environment will look like. Yes, the services will be similar to elsewhere, but the architecture will be completely different. People need to feel at home, and they can't have any other preoccupation than being successful in their studies, so they will be supported. And maybe for a student, they need less support and accompaniment, so this will be open to all Indigenous students. And we are very happy with this project. And once again, I must thank the partners out there on the field. It's a partnership project. It's really hard to get this going. And what we thought would be more facilitating, we found out that it wasn't. There was a resistance even from the neighborhood. Just to let you know that all these questions can't be approached in a silo fashion, that it's a transversal issue. Alexandre, that's it. Okay, I'll stop here. We could have talked for 2 hours, but Amélie said, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to communicate with us. Thank you to both of you, and I am sure that there will be many who will want to contact you because you have established a profile of many First Nations clients that do go into these higher education environments. So it's a challenge that you are meeting right now head on, and everything that had to do with the construction in Sept-Îles for the housing unit and everything that brought on, not only for structural challenges, but the social challenges. But we don't have time to go into that today. And we would have listened to you another hour for sure. Everything you said was so relevant. Thank you. Unfortunately, we have very little time for questions. I think there is one, and maybe to ask the question would be to answer it. We can ask, how can an Indigenous student who does not find housing in Montreal, can they contact the Friendship Center in Montreal? Absolutely, yes. So you can do that in the different in the different cities. You can have access to that resource. Thank you to both of you. We have a link in our discussion, in our chat room, to your website, and thank you. So we won't take any more questions today to respect the time we have. You'll be with us for the next few minutes. We should be finished in about 20 minutes at the most. We might go a little bit over time, the 3 hours planned, but if you will, we'll go into English now to introduce our next guest speaker.
But not the least, today's speaker today. We are honored to welcome Mike DeGagné, CEO of Indspire, Nojibwe. So Mr. DeGagné is an Ojibwe from Ademaki, Wazing, 37 First Nation. Mr. DeGagné comes to Indspire with a lifetime of work in Indigenous health and education. He was appointed Nipissing University President and Vice Chancellor in 2013, becoming one of the first Indigenous president of a Canadian public university. While President of Nipissing, Mr. DeGagné dedicated much of his work to Indigenous issues and ensuring that Nipissing University took a leading role in the indigenization of the post-secondary education sector. Since 2001, Mr. DeGagné has given numerous presentations across Canada on issues of Indigenous health, residential schools, law, reconciliation, and governance. Internationally, he has brought the same message to the United States, Australia, and New Zealand, where maybe Indigenous people are encountering the same kind of problems we do here in Canada. Thanks, Mr. DeGagné, for being with us today. Yours to speak. Thank you for being there.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank our elder for opening in a good way, and our previous speakers. There's a wealth of information there. I'm aware of the time, so I'll be very brief. Perhaps I'll just raise 6 points that we may be able to discuss later on. But I'm the president of Indspire, and in English, of course, that's a contraction of the words Indigenous and inspiration. And that's the work that we try to do. We were previously the National Aboriginal Achievement Foundation. And so what we do is we try to support students from the earliest times that they begin to think about post-secondary education through to their graduation. And more importantly, we try to do this in 6 different steps. And the first one is aspiration. So we catch students in a very early time in their secondary career, perhaps grade 9 at age 14, 15, when they're just beginning to think about what they might want to do with the rest of their lives. And so a great deal of our work then becomes aspirational. We want them to aspire to something great. And part of that, of course, is our annual, Aboriginal Achievement Awards, which are now called the Inspire Awards, where we have over the last decades recognized over 300 inspirational, aspirational figures across Indigenous Canada. So Indigenous people who have done great things. And so young people and all of our community can aspire to what these people have done. So that's our first step. We do a lot of work aspirationally. Secondly, we do preparation. We do a great deal of preparation of students later in their high school career, perhaps moving into cégep, where we provide them with opportunities to think about the kinds of things they want to study when they get to university. So we have, for example, a national gathering called Soaring, where we introduce high school students, secondary students to possibilities for their future. So that's part of the preparation and getting ready. The third part is application. How do they, helping people apply to universities? And in doing this, we have our reason for being is providing students with the funding that they may need to get into universities and to do well. So we have, over the course of several decades, provided over $100 million in bursaries and scholarships to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students from across Canada to help them with their post-secondary education studies, to try to get them in. The fourth step is in participation, and that helps students participate meaningfully in the colleges and the universities that they attend. We have a great many university students, college students who arrive at the university, and as we heard today from many of our young ambassadors, they come there with never having sat in classes of 100 people, never having participated in an institution that's so large, and really feeling like perhaps they know less than everyone else around them. And so what we try to do is connect the resources in universities and colleges with the students, help them participate more fully in the life of the university. We often say, and I said this before as in my role as a university president, perhaps the best way to succeed in university and college life is to be fully committed to it, to get immersed in it, to find friends, find clubs, find activities, not just your studies. And so that full participation is very, very critical. The fifth step is graduation. So participation and then graduation. And to help in this regard, we established a mentors program, Rivers to Success, and our mentorship programs that allow Indigenous people to counsel, to be there as an ear, as a friend, as another person on the end of the line, or another person that you can, FaceTime with, that gives you an opportunity to be mentored and to present your challenges in university to someone who can help you. And we find that the connection that is made between older students and older mentors with younger students who are coming in is a very, very effective way of helping people. I should key in on one point that was very important, and it was raised by the PhD student from Concordia, when she said, why is it that I always seem to people assume I need help? Why don't they just leave me alone to figure things out like every other student? And that's a very important point, because we have to be careful in our universities and colleges that we don't treat every Indigenous student like that they are in need of help, or they need remedial training or some sort of a remedial program. What we have to do is recognize the excellence of many of our students and celebrate that excellence, so that they know they can not only succeed with the least amount of help. And so that's very important. And then finally, what we find ourselves, I think, being involved in quite a bit now is vocation. So we went from preparation to graduation, now vocation. And many businesses that generously donate money to us, and then we donate it to Indigenous students, many of those businesses are looking for a connection between the students we support and careers, banking and oil and gas and environment, and all these people that give us money. Individual Canadians are looking to make a connection between the students who we provide funding to and careers on the other end. So those are the 6 steps: aspiration, preparation, gaining admission or application, and then when you get to university, participation, graduation, and your vocation. And that's essentially what Inspire does. And we're very, very happy to be part of today's discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeGagné. We might have questions from our audience. Don't hesitate to use our Q&A. Because you did shorter than expected. Congratulations. That's super interesting. And maybe just a question, could you just give us maybe an idea of the amount of students you provide them help with during the last maybe 2 decades, or don't know from how long the organization is helping these students, just to have a global idea of how many students could benefit from your help?
Well, it would be thousands of students. And so we do have a formal application process. It's online. You can go to inspire.ca and you can see it there. And we give, it's not always the same grant. It could be a small bursary for someone who needs a little help, or it could be a much larger bursary depending on need. And so it's there in French and English on our website, and we encourage people to apply. One of the interesting things about applying is a couple of years ago, we took a look at people who applied for our funding, and we found that many of them gave up at a certain point. So they started their application and they gave up. And I think this is a very interesting part of student support services that we need to explore, because many of our students are not used to persevering in order to get into the institutions for example, a university or a college might be the first major institution a student ever applies to. And when someone says no, they assume, oh, well, I guess I didn't get in. I guess that means no. But for many of us in the audience, I mean, I have 5 university degrees. 4 of those universities rejected me at first. And all it means is that once they reject you, then you say, well, how can I appeal? What more can I provide you? How can we do this a different way? And you persevere until they accept you and you go on to your studies. And I find that many of our students, our Indigenous students, have not been trained to take, they take no for an answer, and you should never take no for an answer.
Thank you so much, Mr. DeGagné. We've put the your website in the chat room, so if you may know students that could benefit from the help that the Inspire is providing, don't hesitate to click on the website and to contact them. Thanks for being with us today. It was a really great pleasure to welcome you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. DeGagné.
Thank you.
And for our last minute together, maybe I would suggest, well, as mentioned during the last webinar, we have a web page. It's called a Padlet. I would like to share my screen with you so you can see, and we will provide you with the website, the website address, so you can directly click on it, and you will be redirected to this website. It's called a Padlet, and it's kind of I would say collective intelligence process. So, and you are pleased to complete these four main, I would say, topic related to support and services for First People students. So first of all, challenges and obstacles. So and of course, as you can see, there's already people that completed parts, so you can add comments on the comments that are already posted on the site, or add a click if you want to just love or like one of the comments. So there's four main topics: challenges, obstacles, means and actions, inspiring practices, and other references and studies on the subject that could be interesting for people that like to more further on these different issues. So if you have a few minutes, please take a few minutes to just to complete them. So at the end, I think we could reach a really global perspective on all the different issues related to this important topic related to support and services for First People students. So don't hesitate to click on this on the website. Have we put it in the yeah, it's already there. Just click in the chat room. You'll see padlet.com. Otherwise, donc c'est aujourd'hui, c'était le troisième des.
So this was our third webinar out of 5. Before closing with Mrs. Elisabeth Ashini for the closing prayer, our next webinar, leaving room for First Peoples in teaching, that will be Thursday, May 13th at 1:30 as well. So you will get an invitation again for this third webinar. Mrs. Elisabeth Ashini, if she is still connected, I don't see her. Maybe there were technical issues. Is this still the case? If she's not available right now, Madame Picard, maybe you would like to close us off with a few words for this closing prayer, Mrs. Picard. I'm sorry to spring this on you. The sharing I heard sparked something. When we started, Alexandre invited us to engage together in step with the First Peoples students. I would like to repeat what I mentioned at the beginning, to recognize all of the work of the organizing committee for this meeting. and also acknowledge the investment and the perseverance of the students. Furthermore, the presenters shared with us all of their engagement, their preoccupation with wanting to help the students to go further, to take these steps forward, and to always continue to move forward. As Mr. DeGagné said, not accept no for an answer, but to help people to continue to go further. Our elders knew how to create gathering places to transmit knowledge and values. They knew how to share their spirituality and their distinctive ways of being, of thinking, of acting. And this is in a more modern or contemporary way. This is what our speakers shared with us today. I thank our Creator for all this work, all these efforts, all of these hope, and all of these aspirations and dreams. Tsiawang, have a good afternoon. Thank you for having been with us. Thank you all for having been there. Without your presence, events like this would not make as much sense. So thank you for all of those who worked to make these webinars a success, and thank you for our interpreters who work in the background, allowing us to more easily understand our speakers. And I wish you all a wonderful afternoon, and it's a pleasure for me to see you again next May. Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. DeGagné. Thank you, Mrs. Tanya Sirois and Madame Amélie Lainé, and our first speaker, Mr. Francis Verreault-Paul. And we'll see you again.